Hello everyone, my name is Deepika Bansal and I am from the IT department of JCRC Jaipur. We will start with the introduction of the MAD and after that we will have the experiments of the MAD. In this video, we will see how we can use the database for some login credential or for the registration. So in the last video, if you have remembered about the login page, we have created an activity for the login and there we have written the directly admin and the password. So now we will use the database for the same. So we will create it and after that we will fetch the username and password from there. So we don't have to directly or passing the direct data to that. So we will see how we can do that by using the database of the SQLite in the Android. So firstly we will create the registration activity here, so we can get the data in the database, and after that getting the data in the database, by that data we will verify the login. So we will just add here a text view, and after that by clicking on this text view we will redirecting our user to the new activity that will be for the registration, for the registering the data. So we just use the data, we will just align it to the relatively as we have done already in the previous videos or the previous experiments. We will change the text and we will write something like sign up for the new users, like that. So we have just changed this. We will just increase the size so it can be visible. So go to the your text view and under that you can just type the text and it will be show all the options related to the text. Then we will just use the text size and I will just go for the 28 sp, and you can see it has been very large, so it is visible to us. So now we can just bring to some smaller size. So now you can see I will align it to the center that you have the text view for the new user sign up. So after clicking on this, I want to revert my user to the registration page. So I will use the ID for the TV registration and TV for the text view and register. Then you can use the format, so it will be easy to you to remember these things. So in the Java file, so just now go and create our registration activity in your, make sure you go under Java and first file package. In this you will right click and click on the new for the empty activity. So we will name this activity to the registration activity, as we have already discussed that we will create an activity for the registration and click on finish. So you can see here's the new activity has been created, and just go to the activity registration.xml file, so we can just design the registration form or the registration design. So we will go just under layout and activity registration XML. So you can see now what we have to do is the activity registration designing. So what we need is plain text, just drag and drop it. It is for basically allow the user to enter the name. After that, as we have already set the data, so we will set the relative position of this. So it is the edit text, so we will use et username for the user to just register themselves. Just drag the email for the email ID. So we will just repeat the same options for the setting out layout of this activity. Next we need is the password edit text. So we will just drag and drop and set the layout as we have already done it in the previous sections. Alright, so we have the password as well. Click on the email and give the ID to the email, et user email, and we will tell you to update the users as well. So yes, and next is the password. So we will do the same with the ID, et password, user password. So click on it. So we have our 3 edit text here. Once all the detail has been entered, we have to save this to the database. So just we add the button for the register. So we will change the text of the button and the ID of the button, as the text will be the registered and ID will be the same for this. btn register and just text to the register. So we have our activity, registration activity, layout ready. So we have the name, email and the password and the registration button. So now we have to create the database for the same, because we want to, when we click on the register, the data will be automatically saved in the database. So if we want to some added the data, we will use this text view for the same, and we will just use the so we have set it the position of this text view, and then we will name it already signed in. Then it can be reverted on the sign in page, where we have only username and the password section. So if you have already signed in, then you can click on the login. So we have our registration activity ready. If you go to the text option, we have not added anything here. So everything is created by the Android Studio in default. So for all those who have just, these two are the interlink. If you are changing in the designing, it will be reflect in the text, and if you are changing in the text, then it will be shown on the design page. These two are the interrelated. So if suppose I make the text size in the text view to 22 dp, then as you can see, it will be increased. So if you are using the code, it will be also reflect in the design, and if you will change in the design, it will be go in the text also. So it is totally interrelated to each others. When you drag and drop it, it will be automatically use these. We have not given the ID to this, so we will give the ID to this. We maybe call it as the user login. So we have changed the ID of this text view. Now we have created our text, our layout for the registration page. So you can go to the Java file of the registration activity. So you can see, firstly we need to define all the tools or the layout things that we have created here. So we have to create the variable of that also here. So we have used the tree added text, then added text and name it as the name or the some username. And same with the email ID and the password, user password and the user email or the email. You can use anything in the So we have our three added text and we have one button, so private button, and the button is the registration button. So in case do not, if you go to the import section, you have the all the bundles related to this. So you can see button is not imported here. So import, for importing the package for the button, we will just if it is showing some red sign, then it will be showing the solution with this, so we will click on that, and or we can click on the alt enter. It will be automatically include that package that we are using for the same line and the code that we are writing right now. So we have a text view also for the already sign in, so login. So we have named that also. As you can see, the it is showing the red sign, so we have just used the alt and the enter. So any of the package, if you want to import and it is not already imported, then you can use the alt enter, so it will be import all the packages that is related to your recent code. So this is your related to IDs that is assigned to registration layout. So all this is the just using the or declaring the variables. So now we need to assign to these to the corresponding IDs in the XML. So just we will create a simple function for the same, and the private void set a user set up UI views. Okay. And we have created the function because we can have the precise code in a precise manner. So what you have to do here is just assigning the variables to their respective IDs of the XML. As you know, the username, as use the we are using added text if it is type of added text, and find view by ID, and after that using the id that is returned in the XML by using the r.id dot following that id in the respective code of the XML. So for the username, we have created the id of name of et username, and we will do the same with the remaining variables. So okay, we have quickly assigned all the variables with our corresponding uh, variables. So this name and this name can be same, it can be same, there is a no restriction for this. So we will use the just use assigning with the right ID, because if suppose if you assign the added text in the main activity, in the main login activity, then may you have the such IDs use the ET name, so it will be just be similar or can be clash. So just use the unique IDs, because ID has a concept of the uniqueness, so we have to be unique in this. This is the layout in which we are using the registration activity. So just use the IDs and check these IDs that it will be right or not, or it is not goes wrong. So now just we give the reference of this function on create. So the setup view gonna run when this activity gonna run. So we have firstly give that function, And now what we need to do, we need to basically set an on click listener on the registration button. So listens to the click from the user. Once the user click on it, we need to register that detail. So firstly on the on create, we will just put the on listener for the button. Now we will set on click listener. Inside that curly brackets, just type the new on click listener. Android just auto completes this for me, so just we use on click listener, and you can see Android Studio generated the code for on click. Uh, just type the new view dot. It will not gonna work. You have to type the on and then it gonna work. So firstly what you need to do inside this, if you check the user all the fields, further we need to validate the details given by the user. So validate the user as entered the details are right or wrong. So if let's create a function to validate that. So private boolean, because will return yes or no or true or false or 0 or 1, because it will be validate or it will be not, then it will be used as a boolean function. So we will type the boolean and then validate, and inside this what you need to do is we have to firstly define the boolean variable. Let's call this boolean, and then result is equals to false. Alright, then you need to check if username is empty or not. So let's create a variable called name is equals to user name dot get text dot toString. Alright, and then next you also need to check that your user password is blank or not. So user password to the user equals to the username dot get text dot toString. So and we also need to check the get email toString email dot user email dot get text to string. All right, and once we have done this, we need to check if this is empty or not. So if name dot is empty, and it will be and not or, and password is empty and email is empty. Okay, so if the user hasn't entered the name or the password or the email ID, so it's not he's not gonna allow him to register, so it will display some error message. So if we are checking if name is empty or some password is empty or email is empty, that means these three of the fields should be compulsory on this. So it will make a toast that display a message that this comma please enter all the details toast and the long length short. And once we are basically displaying an error message, first parameter is a context is this because we want to display this message on the registration activity on the same activity on which we are working, and toast length for the time duration we have user shorted, and another implementation rather with the dot show message. And if everything is perfect and fine, that means name password and email is correctly entered, then we have display the result true, and you're gonna return this result from this function. So this will validate it to of everything is perfect and fine, then result is true, then it will be go for the registration. So we need to check if validation is true or not. So what you gonna do is if validate, make sure you type the right spellings. So this return value of this function is basically boolean. So boolean result, if everything is fine, is true. If true, mean if validate, that means if true, then register to the database. Upload these to the database. It means okay. I will writing a comment here. So we will come back to this. So firstly we need to create the database. All right. So just we will test now the login function that we have created and the registration function, so it is correctly working or not. So we will just put an on click listener on the text view. So user login dot set on click listener, new on click listener. So inside this, basically if and click on the text view, you should be directed to the main activity, to the login activity. So let's just put the text start activity and the new intent, and we need just specify the source and the destination. So registration activity dot this to main activity dot class. Okay, so if user clicks on the user login, which is basically this thing's already signed in login, so we just click on it, so we will direct it to the main activity. So this is the function which does that, where we specify the source and the destination to go. So this is all about the registration and the database. Thank you so much.